focus. This is the future of learning. In public education today, the discussion on educational accountability and achievement escalates. How educational system can have greater positive impact on learners, how to assess learning in a meaningful way, and how educators can engage with parents and communities to create support system for success of every child are important questions to consider at all levels, including state departments of education. Brian Whiston, Michigan State Superintendent, is here today for a conversation about meaningful learning and what can be done to achieve this in our state. Thank you very much for being here today.
Appreciate the opportunity.
Welcome to the show. As this century unfolds, it seems to me there are a lot of new teaching learning innovations. Personalized learning, student-centered learning, student-led learning, competency-based learning, project-based learning, and those are just a very few. So the question that comes to mind of many people, especially not in education, is which one would make the most impact for student learning? And with fundings and limited, certainly it's not limited, how can school district decide which of those approaches they should accept and invest into?
So yeah, we are going through a process of making Michigan a top 10 performing state, and what we're focusing on is the classroom. And what is it that we want our students to be able to do and achieve? And you've suggested some great learning tools that are out there for students. And I guess my answer to the question is it really has to be student driven. There isn't one single answer that is going to excite and attract all students. And so I think it's incumbent on school districts to focus on classroom learning that is student directed, student driven. And you mentioned some of those project-based learning. You mentioned, and I saw in Clarkston schools today, the deeper thinking, the questioning, to be able to justify your answers. I think it has got to be student-led, student-directed. We need our teachers to more take a step back and be facilitators of the learning and have students do the experimenting, do the, understanding of why they need to learn this. Ask questions. If I'm going to do math, what is it? Why do I need to know this? How am I going to use this? And then have the teacher fold that into the instruction and really make students think at a deeper level and be able to explain their answers and be able to be challenged in those answers by other students who might have a different perspective. And so I guess the answer is it has to be student-led, student-directed, and we have to have a number of options for teachers to use to get all kids excited about learning.
But if we are focusing on each student in this point, you know that educational systems can only be effective if there is a correlation and consistency in how we approach learning, how students learn, and how we assess it. And state tests and standardized tests have been heavily criticized lately for failing to deliver this meaningful assessment and certainly some other consequences. So in your opinion, how can a state test become more reflective of students' learning and more importantly, more relevant to what individual school districts are trying to accomplish?
So I have created a committee of teachers, educators, business community, think tanks, and we're answering that very question about we need to assess students' learning. We need to do that in the classroom almost on a daily basis. Schools need to know on a basis, are the students learning? And then we as a state who are investing $13–14 billion in education need to know if students are learning. So I've challenged the group to say, what is it that teachers, what kind of assessments do teachers need? And what kind of assessments does the local district and state need? And how do we marry those together so that we can reduce the amount of assessments and spend more time on instruction? So that's the challenge I've issued. As soon as I became state superintendent this past July, I did reduce the current test by 2.5 hours in elementary and 8 hours in high school, but that's only step one. We have a lot more work to do. But we really have to build a framework for what type of assessments needed in the classroom, what assessments did the district and state need, because there is too much assessments going on. And whatever assessments we do needs to drive instructions. It needs to provide immediate feedback to the teacher and student and parents so that what the teacher is doing in the classroom can be adjusted immediately. This notion of taking a test and getting the results back 6 months later in this day and age of technology makes no sense to me, because it doesn't help us drive instruction or improve what's taking place in the classroom. So I want to see an assessment system that makes sense, that provides immediate feedback and reduces the amount of time spent on testing, so more time can be spent on learning in the classroom.
Does it mean that potentially some of the local assessments can be used?
Yes, I mean, one of the assessments we used in my old job was the NWA assessment, and I quite frankly don't know why we can't use that for both the district and state assessment.
Okay.
It's a tool that's computer adaptive. Students take it, get immediate results. Teachers can adjust what they're doing in the classroom, and it really looks at a student's growth. So I entered 3rd grade. I took the test in September. Maybe I take it again in January, and then I take it again in May. And did I get a year's growth? Less than a year or more than a year? And that's really what's of interest to parents, you know, whether it be the old MEEP test or M-STEP test that we gave this past year. Those tests really aren't meaningful to parents because they get a score, but what does that score really translate to? So I'd really like to go to a growth model so that a parent knows when their child enters X grade and they leave that grade, did they grow a year or less or more? And we can tell them that data based on the current assessments that are out there. And I think that's more meaningful to parents. And it's more meaningful to me if I'm trying to decide, do I want to send my child to this school district or that school district, to have data to say, gee, in this district, every 3rd grader grew 1.1 year. In the other district, they grew 9/10 of a year or 9/12 of a year. And so that can help a parent make a decision on where they should send their kids. And it also helps the districts understand where their students are at and what do they need to do differently to help those students grow at least a year. Some students need to grow more in a year, and of course our students who are high achievers, they do grow more in a year, and we have to find a way to challenge them so that they continue to grow.
Okay, well, on the same subject of measurements, so to speak, your goal as the State Superintendent and the State Board of Education is that 10 and 10, which means that in 10 years you would like to see Michigan as one of top 10 states in the United States in terms of educational performance. And what does it exactly educational performance mean? And especially in 10 years, it's a measurable goal. How would we know whether we're there or not? What are the indicators or criteria? Is it another test?
Right, no, we're not looking for more tests.
Okay.
What we're looking for is we've developed 7 goals. Those goals range from having students have opportunities from preschool through age 20. It talks about student-led instruction. It talks about preparing teachers to be successful in the classroom. It talks about preparing administrators to be successful. It talks about aligning resources to where they're needed. It's about flexibility in terms of how people spend resources. So we've come up with 7 total goals, and now we're going through a process of meeting with teachers and educators, think tanks, business community, and putting meat on those bones. And we'll have measurements for all of those. But for example, one might be, we want to lead the nation in how many college credit students gain when they graduate from high school. So then the measure would be how many college credits
yes,
is the average
that's what
student
exactly
learn.
I was kind of referring.
So it's not another test.
Okay.
As we talked about, we have enough tests. We need to reduce the amount of tests. And quite frankly, we have too much that we require from school districts in terms of paperwork and in terms of reporting. So when we're doing this, we have to find a way to use current data or to get rid of some data that we're not using if we're going to require some new data points. So it's really about, you know, how many kids are going to preschool in 3rd grade or 3-year-old preschool, how many kids are going to 4-year-old preschool, and those are the measurements that we will use. Now there's also international tests, the NAEP and that students take and use to see how our students are doing compared to other states, and so those comparisons will be out there. So it won't be one data point or tool, there'll be multiple points based on each of the goals.
Okay, so one of those 7 goals that you mentioned is trying to get more parental or family involvement. And statistics and data and research shows that yes, family play a significant role and they help significantly schools to deliver quality education, but only if they're valued and only if their input is requested consistently and incorporated in decision making. And that does not really happen often.
You know, it's got to be a partnership between schools and parents. We in the schools only have kids about 12% of the calendar year, which means a lot of the time that students have is not in schools. So we need a rich partnership where we're working with the parents and saying, this is what we're going to do to help your kids be successful, and this is what we need you to do. Some parents can do that. Some parents need training on how to work with their kids in reading or math, and we need to provide that training in schools. But we need to engage our parents in a meaningful way. And how we did that in my old district is we invited parents to come in, and then we would tell them, in the classrooms, this is what we're focused on, and this is what you should see. And then we asked parents to go around and see if they saw those things. And parents who are very busy, working very hard, plus all the running around with the children's activities and everything else that life throws at you, if you're going to ask parents to be engaged, it has to be meaningful. And like you said, they have to see the value in their participation. And so we want them in our classrooms seeing what we're doing. We want them to help us look at how we can do better. We want them to help us work with their students and set aside half hour, an hour a day to read or to play math games as a family. When you're traveling on weekends or during the summer, what kind of games can you play that continues the educational process? Kids can take books with them or readers, and so that they're continuing that growth so we don't get that summer loss of learning. So we need to actively engage our parents in a meaningful, caring way and really understand that if we're going to be successful as a state and be a top 10 performing state, it's going to take all of us. It's going to take the students, it's going to take us educators, it's going to take the parents, and quite frankly, it's going to take the business community stepping up and being more involved in mentorships and in guiding and helping schools be successful.
Well, what do you do at the Michigan Department of Education to involve parents at the state level?
So that's, since we just adopted that goal, we're going through that process of saying, what can we do at a state level to provide best practices, promising practices to school districts so they see how meaningful parent involvement does make a difference academically, and show them that by engaging their parents, their student achievement is going to go up. And if districts see that, I think you'll see more districts actively engage their parents. Now, there's many districts who do a very good job of actively engaging their parents, but not all districts. And we have to share those districts that are doing it well. We have to show other districts how they're doing that.
Well, absolutely what you mentioned earlier, that most of the time children do spend at their home. So learning starts there, education starts there. So as the state superintendent and a grandparent, and a children's advocate, what message would you like to send to all of the parents about the future of education in Michigan?
Well, we do want to be a top 10 performing state academically. That means your students will have better successes as they go out and enter college or the workforce. And so we want to partner with you, the parents, to actively engage you in our schools in a meaningful way. We want you to challenge us, and we want to challenge you to do what's best for your kids. And sometimes that means difficult conversations need to take place about what's happening. And we need to have those difficult conversations because we have to have the end goal in mind. And the end goal in mind is really to have the students be successful and reach beyond their potential. And to do that, we have to do it together.
Well, okay, thank you so much for your time today, and thank you very much for everything that you are bringing to the state of Michigan and having the interest of our children in heart.
Appreciate the opportunity to be here. I had a great visit today in Clarkston schools. The parents, the teachers, the staff, administration should be very proud of the great things going on here.
Thank you. The latest report from Center of Educational Research and Innovation brings to our attention the concept of learning ecosystems. Interdependent combination of various providers and organizations that interact with learners over time and play various roles in their learning. From national and state departments of education to families and community, we all are accountable for creating these ecosystems that nurture our children's learning.